tariffs is great. It means that when you export goods to the EU, the importers shouldn't have to pay tariffs, but they're subject to conditions, and those conditions are basically around, is the product properly British? That's number one. Number two, you have to prove that the product is safe and meets the regulations of the EU to export it there. And there's a lot of those conditions. So in turn, they are rules of origin and they are regulatory requirements. Those are the two things that people need to meet. On rules of origin, it's phenomenally complex. There are pages of tables in the UK-EU agreement telling you exactly how you determine if your product is sufficiently from the UK in order to qualify for the zero tariff. It's not so simple as just putting it on a truck, driving it out to the EU, and it qualifies for zero tariff. That was the old way of doing things in the single market. Now you have to prove it. Second, regulation. Is it safe? Oh, you have to go through. You can go through multiple forms, particularly if you're exporting food, particularly if that food is of animal origin. Then you have to say, is it safe? Has a vet seen it? Have I put the right entries into a database? Have I filled in the right paperwork at the right time? Then it can be inspected at the border before it's allowed to be in. There's a lot of processes that we now have to go through. We didn't have to go through those until December the 31st. There's a lot of forms around trade, and we didn't know what they were going to be until at least December 24th when we got the deal, and some of it still was being published a few hours before December 31st when this started. Some of what's happening now is just people getting used to the forms and making sure they're filled out right, and people have done the databases entries right. There's different databases you have to make entries into for different exports. But this is hitting EU exports to the UK. It's hitting UK exports to the EU and Great Britain exports to Northern Ireland, which are largely covered under the same kind of rules, because Northern Ireland, in terms of goods, is more like the EU than it is the rest of the United Kingdom now. So if you have to go through processes to export to France, you probably have to go through the same ones to get food to Northern Ireland. In general, you can have a product that combines UK and EU parts, as long as it combines in the right amount and isn't actually 90% Chinese, and that will qualify for the zero tariff. But I have to say to you that UK manufacturers, even of the smallest items, who are part of European supply chains, who are sending stuff to the EU, receiving stuff, processing it, are in a fight for your lives to actually sustain that position, because obviously it is now more difficult to do that into and out of the UK than it is to do that into and out of Slovenia or Poland or wherever. And because you have to make those checks, am I eligible? What I'm doing? It's fine if you're combining entirely UK parts with entirely EU parts and you're doing processing in both parts, sending them around, that's fine. As soon as you're not, as soon as you're, for example, if you're only doing a little bit of processing in the UK, it might be insufficient processing, at which point you're no longer eligible for zero tariffs. Or you're combining it with something that's coming in from outside of the EU, in which case, again, it's no longer then zero tariff. So the more complicated the process is, the less likely it is that you're still going to be eligible for the zero tariff. And that is the problem. Now, this is not legal advice. I cannot say for certain that an individual's product is going to qualify or is not going to qualify, but it has to be checked. In a few months, we'll have adjusted the paperwork, but that will have meant already immediate changes to the way goods are being transported. But then it will take some months beyond that, even into years, for the economy to adjust. And I'm afraid, some activities will no longer be carried out in the UK. On the other hand, some will no longer be carried out in the EU, will come back to the UK. So it's not entirely one-sided. There's probably more engagement with European supply chains that won't happen in the UK than new stuff that will, unfortunately. But it's not all one way. There are going to be winners in this as well as losers. So if there's something that's currently mostly being done in the UK, but some of it's being done in the EU, then whoever's doing that might just want to bring that last bit of the out of the EU and back into the UK. But if it's the other way around, and that's going to be more common, then you may, you're in a battle to keep that process, whatever it is, in the UK. Now, that's just goods. There are some instances where we're also providing the software, or we're providing the the insurance, or some element of the service as well. That's complicated as well, but doesn't have the same kind of tariff and regulatory issues. Slightly different, and depending on some other elements, that might be easier to retain in the UK. Services vary considerably. Some of them aren't going to be affected at all by the changes that come in. Some of them will be heavily affected. So if I'm providing consultancy services into an EU country, I never travel there. I do them entirely over Zoom or various other calls. I send reports. Nobody much the wiser as to whether I'm providing that service or not. Shouldn't actually be affected whatsoever by the change in trading relations. If, on the other hand, I need to go to the EU to sit in a client's office for 10 days a month to deliver the consultancy service, I probably can't do that anymore without a work permit, and I'll find it hard to get hold of. If I need to bring some data out of the EU and into the UK, at the moment that's okay, but we still await a full data adequacy ruling. We've only got a temporary adequacy where for the next few months it's okay to transport data from the EU to the UK. If I've got a professional qualification, if I need to be a licensed accountant to take part in an activity, that qualification probably is not going to be recognised anymore in the EU. So with services, it's probably even more complex than goods, of saying, does what I'm doing have restrictions in it? Yes, it does, probably, if I have to go there. If I can do it remotely, it might have less of a problem. There's no single rule on services. There's nothing like tariffs, which are paid on services. Yeah, work permits are done at different country levels. There's not across the EU to the UK agreement on that, except for a few areas of temporary visiting. Therefore, yeah, it's up to the country concerned as to how they treat you. That's going to be tricky to look up. But essentially, whereas before we could do what we like where we like, that's not going to be the case anymore. That's what we're hearing, is that data adequacy may be a problem, and certainly we cannot rely on that continuing after middle of this year. And therefore, if you're a business that relies heavily on being able to transfer data between the UK and the EU, you need to start thinking about what your contingency is if we are no longer covered by data adequacy. Maybe standard clauses or other things. It's going to take more time, but there are still ways to do it. Every problem that you've got, that we see in trade, it's got to be an opportunity as well. So, okay, I can't sell my langoustines now into France. That's a problem. But you try buying any langoustine in the UK at the moment, you'll never find them. So, there's got to be an opportunity. There are people who would buy it. Like I say, there's got to be services or goods that are coming into the UK from the EU that are going to have more trouble, are going to have more paperwork in the future. We'll find out what they are, and if there's a UK alternative, then try to sell that. So there has to be those opportunities. I don't exactly know what they are, because they're going to differ across the economy. But essentially, a UK business is going to now be more competitive supplying into the UK than an EU business. So if there are businesses that think they were just being kind of squeezed out, they may now have a chance.